South Bronx, New York. My direct connection to the South Bronx, New York, uh, is from lineage of my great grandparents. My great grandparents migrated from Charleston, South Carolina. I would say in the late 40s, early 1950s, but probably late 40s. And they get to the South Bronx. My grandmother's in the South Bronx with them. My mom is born in Harlem, I believe, and in 55. And because great Nana, we call her Little Nana, rest in power, may her soul always live on. Um, but yes, we call her Little Nana, and she's she's the root, she's the matriarch, and she's the reason that we all pay a certain reverence to the South Bronx. The Bronx period, but the South Bronx particularly, because her and my great grandfather, got there and kind of put the stake in the ground. 1117 Forest Avenue, that was the address. Right up the street from Forest Housing, salute to Diamond D, Lord Finesse. I feel like, yeah, salute to all the legends from around that way and just peeps that paved the way. But I'm even speaking on this, really going back to my earlier times, just hearing and feeling hip hop for the first time was around there, and it's like, I would say I probably heard it obviously before this moment that I'm speaking of, but the time I felt it most was in 1984. I was about 8 years old, and I remember Curtis Blow AJ Scratch. I think it was from the album, he had an album called Ego Trip, I believe. And in 84, that AJ Scratch joint, AJ, hit me, AJ. Yeah, the up in the Bronx where the people are fresh. There was one DJ who could pass the test, and he's down by law, and he's ready to play. That's right, Joe. His name is AJ. Yeah, that joint. But it just rang and hit me. And, obviously, I rooted this story with great pops and great Nana and my roots to the South Bronx, because when I heard that up in the Bronx with the people, it kind of rooted to that reverence inside. And it was just like, yo, this is about us. This is for us. And it really had me, feeling a type of way, in a great way. I was really mesmerized by that song and the sound and the beat and the way he was rhyming to the beat. It was just like, wow, this is crazy. This is hip hop. This is that next thing, and although I couldn't articulate it in that way at the time, that's what I felt. And I'm articulating those feelings, 40 years later, which is amazing. But that was those moments, I feel like, that really shaped me coming into my own, shout out and salute. I wish I could find this brother. There's a DJ who was from around that area named DJ Sugarfoot. And I remember block parties happening. So, that AJ Scratch was memorable. So maybe fast forward, leaving the Bronx, moving to Far Rockaway, salute to Pops, my grandfather, and Julia. And rest in power to both of them, Pops and Julia. And yeah, that was our Far Rockaway times. We were there, and that was a whole nother chapter. Let me not get off topic. So at the time living in Far Rock, there were several times we would end up back in the Bronx, because that's where, at this point, Great Pops passed. I feel like Great Pops passed in 83, 84. And then Nana was there. So, of course, the family, surrounded Great Nana to make sure she was always okay. And we would always end up there, visiting family functions. Sometimes there were block parties and things in the neighborhood that brought us around. And a memorable time going must have been around 1989. DJ Sugarfoot was just spinning the Back to Life, the soul to soul joint. However do you want it? Back to life. And, it was just like mind blowing because that beat was so dope. The vocals were just thrilling. Shout out to Karen Wheeler. Shout out to Jazzy B and the whole soul to soul vibe. That was a big inspiration too. That was a big summer, 89. And yeah, I feel like going back and, do the right thing and Public Enemy. And yeah, that was a big summer for us in the culture. But that was a memorable moment too. And I think it did something within me to really teach me to feel this music in a way that, is still unfolding, but it gave me a grasp to be able to create the way that I can. And I'm thankful for that. But yeah, those are those times, those are those moments that I really feel like has tapped into that inner part of me to want to be a creative leader, and this is before I knew I really wanted to create. And even before that time, right, one of my favorite things to do, shout out to my grandfather, shout out to Pops, is he would let us watch probably movies we shouldn't have been watching, but not on a nudity end of things, but just too sophisticated or just, violence, maybe like a Charles Bronson flick or something like that. But then a lot of times too, just flicks that were just over our heads, but I feel like the flicks that he made sure we saw were flicks like Do the Right Thing and The Last Dragon and Beat Street and Crush Groove and Breaking 1 and 2 and, all of those type of films, we went with him, even Godfather films, we went with Pops. And I say all that to say, when I was young, watching television shows like Miami Vice and other cop shows, Spencer for Hire and Hunter and all these different shows that Pops would watch, it would allow me to like go to school and sometimes get calls from school, good and bad, about a story I would write. Sometimes really good. Oh man, he's talking about pink flamingos and he's describing water in a way that we've never heard before and blah, blah, blah. And, this was something that made me say, wow, I hope I don't get in trouble. But because I knew a lot of this was coming from, me making up stuff from TV and movies I was watching. But eventually I got applauded for it, and I never really, wrote anything profane or anything explicit in these writings. It was just the teacher was more impressed with how I was able to describe these things and how I even knew about them, at 10 years old, whatever. So that was a big thing for my creative process too, getting props for my writing young, and leading into, 10 years old, Jamal Thomas, shout out to Jamal Thomas. Shout out to, do I have that anywhere? I thought I had it close. It's all good. But yeah, I'll do a whole nother joint on that and show the records and all of that. But yeah, shout out to Jamal Thomas. He was a classmate, 5th grade, Mrs. Goldstein's class in Far Rockaway, PS 104. And Jamal is the one that showed me how to write rhymes, write bars. And we wrote a rhyme and we performed it at the talent show. And I feel like it was titled like Crack is Whack or something like that. And it was the first time I wrote bars, but not even first time I wrote bars. First time I was actually brave enough to say, or perform anything in front of anyone in my life. And I feel like that was very life-changing. And then fast forward from Jamal, I don't know if I learned this before or after, probably before. His parents came to the class to do a show and tell type of thing. And they have a singing group, Thomas and Taylor. Rest in power to Lamar Thomas Sr. But yeah, and that was inspiring because I remember them showing videotape of performances outside of the country and just different intel that I took in at a young age. And it just wowed me that these regular people did this, in their lives. This is what they did. So that was just amazing to me all the time. But, fast forward, I feel like, that first rhyme gave me the courage to later approach it again and really dig in. Oh, y'all want to hear the rhyme? Building blocks of crack is a product of probation. You do crack because you lack education. To make a little money, you do anything. We're going to show you what the word crack really means. C stands for all the crack you sold to a girl who named D. She only 9 years old. R stands for the way you man. When he robbed an old lady and you claim you a man. A stands for you always illin', robbing and stealing, and thinking you chillin'. C stands for when the crack is gonna end and you're 6 feet under like the rest of your friends. K stands for crack kills. You so whack and you lack skills. Word up, crack is whack. That's going back to 86, y'all. Circa 1986. What year is it? Yo, it's almost 40 years ago. It's crazy. But that's some of the essence of what leads to where I am today on this journey. And again, these are the stories, these are the connections that if you're down with me and you vibe with me, I want to share, and I want to continue to share these type of stories. And, shameless plug, Live Life and Tell Stories, the John Robinson T. It's available. Check the shop. And salute.